again, we're not getting too specific to one role if you are applying for multiple roles here, but that's the benefit of LinkedIn, again, is because you can include more information. You can go longer here. And welcome to the Let's Eat Grandma Career Warrior Podcast. How should your resume and LinkedIn profile be different? Today, we're going to discuss what your resume should look like and what your LinkedIn should look like. And most importantly, how should they compare and contrast? With hiring ramping up in January, more and more job seekers are getting their act together. So I wanted to make sure that you have your best resume and also LinkedIn profile to go with that resume. This podcast is, of course, powered by my company, Let's Eat Grandma. We've been listed on the New York Post, US News and World Report, Money.com, and many others as a top resume service. Head on over to let'seatgrandma.com/podcast to access all of our resources for podcast listeners. So moving on to the content. I had an event here in Austin, Texas last Thursday, and I think that this was a point of contention here. I brought up the LinkedIn profile, and there was a lot of confusion. Folks had a bunch of questions on, okay, if I have a LinkedIn profile and I can only have one LinkedIn, but this resume is this thing that should be adapted and targeted, and I should have multiple versions of my resume sometimes. I could see why this caused a lot of confusion. So I wanted to create this podcast episode to set it straight with what the differences should be between your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Your resume and your LinkedIn profile should not look completely different. I think that's something that a lot of people get stuck on, is if you have like this targeted resume or multiple versions of your resume, then can your LinkedIn profile look way different, and wouldn't that bother people? Of course it would bother people. I want someone to bounce from your resume to your LinkedIn profile and vice versa. I want people to ask you for your resume after viewing your LinkedIn profile, or even to have a version of your resume on that LinkedIn profile. So they shouldn't look entirely different. Yet at the same time, I want to get the point across that the resume is best created and best served really when it has that targeted approach. So you're saving hiring managers time by connecting the dots between your experiences and the job posting. You're removing all of those extraneous things that don't really have to do with the role that you're going to be applying for, or the types of roles that you're going to be applying for. So much to the point to where you can be transparent about the fact that this is a version of your resume that really hones in on your software development experience, just as an example here. Your LinkedIn profile should be filled out and reveal many more personal and detailed characteristics than your resume. So I don't mean personal and detailed like likes to party on weekends and snorts while laughs, but reasons perhaps why you changed careers from a CPG-based marketing role to a SaaS-based marketing role, or more things that you're involved with that go beyond your professional experiences, things like volunteer work and projects. Those are the things that I believe look really nice on a LinkedIn profile. There is no risk in having a fuller LinkedIn profile, especially when you compare it to the resume. The LinkedIn user experience is way different than a hiring manager who has less time to look at your resume. So with LinkedIn, you can point and click and expand different sections and really decide where you want to put your attention. And with a resume, it's just a PDF in which you scroll from top to bottom and are just reading, typically putting more attention on what's at the very top of the resume or what's on that very first page. So keep that stuff in mind and know that it's perfectly fine to have those differences, to really get more detailed on your LinkedIn profile and to let that be the unabridged version of your resume. So I'm going to quickly go through different elements of your LinkedIn profile and talk about the differences between that and your resume. Let's talk about that about section on your LinkedIn profile. The about section is where you could fill in more detail about who you are as a person, what your story is, at least from a career perspective. That can be similar to the summary you have at the top of your resume, in the sense that it summarizes the reasons why you are awesome as a professional and speaks a little bit more about your higher level accomplishments and things like that. But fill that sucker out on your LinkedIn profile. Don't be afraid to really max out the amount of characters that are included in that section here, feel free to use first person compared to the resume, in which I would recommend removing pronouns and articles and things like that, but be more personal in that LinkedIn About section. And let's say, for example, you're applying to both Chief Information Officer roles and, say, Chief Information Security Officer roles, two different types of positions. Then maybe you could draw some connection between both of those positions. Maybe you can include, for example, some of the commonalities between those roles, like strategic leadership, risk management, your ability to communicate with a team and to get things done with different stakeholders. Feel free to really zoom out and include both core requirements in both of those roles. And again, we're not getting too specific to one role if you are applying for multiple roles here, but that's the benefit of LinkedIn, again, is because you can include more information. You can go longer here. Let's talk about your professional experiences on your LinkedIn profile. Perfectly fine if you want to include the same exact thing on your LinkedIn profile. I think a lot of people do that. I think it's a strategy that works for a lot of job seekers. But then again, what happens if you are applying for multiple types of roles? Again, I would encourage going longer on that LinkedIn professional experience. Say you have 5 targeted bullet points that speak to just your CISO role in your resume. Say you're getting targeted and cutting that thing down. Well, your LinkedIn profile, you might include 8 or possibly 9 different bullet points that speak to your CISO types of responsibilities as well as your CIO responsibilities. I know this can be different for a lot of different positions out here, but the point I'm trying to make here is your LinkedIn is more unabridged. You can speak to multiple facets of a role, and your resume is targeted, and you cut out the things that don't matter for the hiring manager. Your LinkedIn profile should have a nice picture, okay? We just took LinkedIn headshots here in Austin, Texas at our event last week, and there were some amazing photos that were taken. Take that picture off of your resume if you have visuals and other things like that on your resume. Those things belong on your LinkedIn profile. And I've seen such amazing pictures out there on the resume, but I just think it's a distraction from what really matters on that document there. I want to talk about other elements of the LinkedIn profile that I might skip on the resume. For example, certifications, volunteer experience, and projects, they all have their place in a targeted resume if those are directly relevant to the job posting. In some cases, I would recommend just removing them if that's not going to be something that's going to help you as a job seeker. But with a LinkedIn profile, I recommend just putting it all on the table and just including all of these things. LinkedIn is, of course, a social media platform. So the more types of things that we can include, the more of a chance we can have a commonality, for example, between someone who has that same certification or went to the same school or volunteered for the same organization. LinkedIn is creating this web of mutual connections out there. And so again, I recommend going deeper and more detailed on that LinkedIn profile. All right, so that wraps it up for today. These are some key differences between the resume and the LinkedIn profile. Tag me, go ahead and post this episode on your LinkedIn and go ahead and tag me and let me know, did I miss anything or do you have any extra questions based off of this episode? I would be more than happy to help you out. And I always love hearing from fellow warriors. Again, you can go to our website, letseatgrandma.com/podcast if you want more resume help. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.
Career Warrior Podcast.
And before you go, remember, if you're not seeing the results you want in your job search, our highly trained team of professional resume writers here at Let's Eat Grandma can help. Head on over to letseatgrandma.com/podcast to get a free resume critique and $70 off any one of our resume writing packages. We talk all the time on the show about the importance of being targeted in your job search. And with our unique writing process and focus on individual attention, you'll get a resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn profile that are highly customized and tailored to your goals to help you get hired faster. Again, head on over to letseatgrandma.com/podcast. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.